welcome back. Thank you for being so patient. For those of you who are just tuning in on cable TV, and for those of you who've just arrived, we had an executive session that we called, so we started our meeting at 5 o'clock. So here's what you missed. You missed the call to order, you missed the roll call, the Pledge of Allegiance, approval of the agenda, and then we moved into executive session. So we came back from executive session. We had a motion to return, which brings us to changes in the agenda. I believe I was informed that we have two, so whoever wants to make a motion, please feel free.
I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda for item E3. And Jerry, I don't remember which one you wanted.
G2.
And G2.
And John, are you clear about what we're attempting to do here? My G2 is to remove it from aggregate approval. That's it, and to vote individually on that item for G2. Is that the same for
And
you?
my intention is the same on E3, to vote on those.
That
Will
item?
E3 be separate, or is do we vote on all of E together? I want to vote on the 4 items within E3 separately.
Got it.
Okay, so let's handle that one. I have a motion. I need a second for that one.
Second.
Call the roll.
Just before I call the roll, I just want to make sure I have this correct. So in E3, all of the contracts will be voted on separately, and then G2 will be pulled out of the consent. And so you will still vote on the other items within G under the consent. Is that correct?
So we would, what I heard was we'll be voting on E3 and G2 separately, and the others within those categories will be voted on in aggregate.
Same, yeah.
All right.
So
Yes, I
first
have it.
motion, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason,
Yes.
Mr. Combs,
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan,
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut,
Yes.
Mr. Miranda.
Yes. Now we have a motion on the floor for G2. Need a second.
You did that all together.
did it
That was
together.
all encompassing.
That's what
Yep,
he
you're good.
advised us to do, so that's what we did.
2 changes voted on at one time.
I understand that, but we had people making 2 motions and seconding motions as
Nope.
well.
No, we're good. It was 2 changes, 1 motion.
That's fine. Whatever gets us there, Mr. Parliamentarian, are you happy?
Yes.
Let's move on. I need approval of the minute, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the special board meeting held in this room on November 29th, 2023.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason,
Yes.
Mr. Combs,
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan,
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut,
Yes.
Mr. Miranda.
Yes, thank you. We now go to presentation. Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. This evening we have Mr. Patrick Szymanski here to present from the Citizens Advisory Commission.
Thank you, Superintendent Spicer, for this opportunity to again address the board and CAC activities. And you, the board, thank you for your continued interest in the CAC, and I wish everybody a joyous and merry holiday season. Our November meeting was moved to December 6th to allow our committee members to hear the board discussion on when or if another levy would be on the ballot. We therefore met on December 6th. At that meeting, Superintendent Spicer provided a short overview of the levy failure and the potential options the board is considering. The committee has Milford residents, so they were very interested in the next steps. I thought the superintendent gave a good summary, but one that also was a fair description of the board's dilemma in making a difficult decision. Then Assistant Superintendent Jenny Berkeley gave a short presentation on the reporting structure of Milford's schools, from the superintendent's direct reports to those that report to the superintendent's staff, as well as the treasurer's staff. This did generate some questions as folks not familiar with the school structure sought to understand the reporting structure. Indeed, this presentation was an identification of what groups were included in this presentation was an identification of what groups were also in the MEA and the MCAA. Some discussion started to drift as committee members asked questions and provided their thoughts, but the committee chair did get us back on track, asking us for these individuals to carry on this conversation either after our meeting or via the Slack app. This intervention was important because this is one of the things that last year pulled us off track and made us less effective. Then the groups met to work on with their administrative support person as they explored a concept each group is addressing. Each group has a main idea that is exploring, and when necessary, asking for more support info. Looking at the Slack app, some groups are using this well, and other groups still need more help in using it. This is important as communication between the groups was one of our weaknesses last year, and we identified that problem, and we are, from a leadership point of view, trying to push people to make sure they communicate between meetings rather than just at the meeting. Personally, I feel it's still a bit too early to identify the project each group is working on. I will think we will let the groups explore, and it's up to us as a leadership to gather that data and explore possible recommendations to the superintendent. We may somewhere in the future discuss this stuff and determine when to involve you and let you guys know exactly what's going on, but I don't think we're far enough along at this point to talk about any kind of detail of what we're doing and what could or could not end up happening. Again, thank you so much for your interest, and if there's any questions, please.
I actually just wanted to thank the CAC for coming up with the idea to involve our senior community. Many of you may have seen that there was an opportunity for seniors to learn about their cell phones and with some of our students, and I just think that's a really great idea, and I thank you for bringing that forward.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Patrick. Mr. Josh Kaufman, Director of Fine Arts Extracurricular Activities.
Thank you, Mr. Spicer. This month, we're going to recognize some of our student artists from Milford Junior High. So if I could have them step forward to be recognized, that would be great. I also want to thank, in the moment, Miss Emily DeSgrange, Miss Maddie Whitty, the art teachers at Milford Junior High for being here and cultivating a love of art in their students at the junior high, as well as Principal Misty Getz, who's here to support her kids tonight as well. As I call your name, I've got a certificate for you, and if you'll come up, I'll recognize that. Chloe Campbell, was Chloe able to make it? Okay, she hadn't been here earlier. Chloe's work is this one here, which I believe is a rodeo star. This vector image in the middle. It's wonderful. She's an 8th grader. Alexis Gale, and Alexis tipped her hand on a great Christmas present. This is Mom and Dad who are in the back row over there. A vector image of her parents. How beautiful is that? Congratulations, Alexis. Great job. Alexis is an 8th grader. We have James Hawkins. James has the pastel work on the end. He was standing right underneath it. Congratulations, James. Wonderful, wonderful. We've got Ella Hess, who has a colored pencil, oil, and pastel, Rose and Thorns. Everybody standing under your artwork. Was that intentional or was that accidental? That's great. That's great. So, Ella, congratulations. Wonderful. We've got Melissa Korn, who drew a beautiful perspective of a shopping center down here. These are sticking together. Melissa, congratulations. Thank you. And we have Hannah Parks with this wonderful vector that I might ask her if I can hang in my office of Bob Ross here. And if you have a chance to look closely at the end, she tucked in a little hidden secret. Bob Ross is actually spelled in the curls of Bob Ross. So, congratulations. Well done. Well done. So congratulations to our student artists at Milford Junior High. Thank you, Ms. DeSgrange, Ms. Whitty, Mrs. Gatz, for cultivating art in your building. And then, Mrs. Getz, if I could ask you a favor while I highlight a few other art things in our district, if you could take a photo of these young student artists, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much. Yes, that'd be good. Thank you so much. And I don't want to miss an opportunity to celebrate some of the things going on in the arts in our district. I know A few of these have been mentioned at previous board meetings, but a lot has happened since our last board meeting. 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, our high school choirs were invited to perform at the Feast of Carols at CCM. That's a pretty exclusive opportunity. There's generally about 3 choirs that are invited to do that. This year it was our choir, St. Xavier's Choir, and I believe Mason's Choir were there. So a pretty prestigious group to be a part of. Our band, prior to the last regular meeting, they actually performed at Grand Nationals on the day of the last regular meeting. They finished 39th in the country, so pretty incredible. Proud of our band program. Matilda tickets are on sale for the first musical in the new Zamudio Theater, March 15th and 16th, so please get your tickets for those. They're on sale now. And last night, we concluded our biggest winter performance season, I believe, on record. There were 28 performances from our vocal music students and our instrumental music students, both in formal concerts as well as community performances at some of our senior living centers around the community. 28 performances over about a 2.5-week time period. So really incredible. And then the last piece I want to share is we have officially put a date in the opening of the Zamudio Theater, February 4th, 3 to 5 p.m. It's a community open house, so we invite everyone from the community to come out and see this beautiful facility that our students will create wonderful productions and music in. So thank you for your support. I know several of you were at some of our concerts and performances this week. I want you to know our students, our teachers, our administrators see that, they value that, and they appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. All right, we have one final recognition, and that is the recognition of Dave Miranda, our board president. Tonight is Dave's last meeting. He served 4 years on the board. And Dave, I'm going to read some things. Don't put it up yet, Steve. I'm going to read some things that the reason why you're the GOAT. Now, it could be that you're an old goat, or it could be that you're the greatest of all time. We'll let someone decide on that themselves. But Dave's been involved in the schools for over 20 years, if not more, as a parent, a community member. He's been a part of Athletic Boosters, certainly our board member and board president the last 4 years. Things that you might not know about Dave is that if Dave calls you, you might as well sit down, hunker down for about 40 minutes. I've been able to master that to about 20 minutes towards the end here. But as we talk about that, though, Dave, all serious, I appreciate the ongoing phone calls. I actually will miss our calls because you're thoughtful, you ask a lot of questions. But most importantly, I think the question is, what do you think about this? Not telling me what to do or what to think, but what do I think about this? One of the early things that I got out of you, Dave, was risk mitigation. And so I think what's important for people to know is that your engineering mind as an engineer never stops and has never stopped. And you've put that training to good use here, helping us through a lot of things. You strive to take out a lot of emotion of decision making and always put students first. Great questions. You're always willing to learn from us as we are willing to learn from you. And we all know that Dave loves athletics. He's a true fan of the district and certainly our sports. But he also cares about our kids, what they do in the classroom, what they do outside the classroom beyond sports, including our fine arts. You will always see Dave. Dave's at things that he probably shouldn't be at. Like, why are you? You're at everything. You're like, where's Dave? Where's Waldo? But Dave is there. He's 100% record attendance, right? And what's interesting fact about that is I believe 2 of your kids had perfect attendance going through school. Is that correct?
And one of them had perfect attendance for 13 years.
There you go. And so, I think that Dave even tried to schedule his golf games around committee meetings and other things. And, we certainly appreciate that, Dave. We're going to miss that from you. I think most of all is that you are a huge supporter of this district, this community. You're thoughtful, you have humor, you're dedicated when it comes to our students, staff, and families. But most importantly, I think we're going to miss the good news report. And I think someone's going to have to pick that up going forward, starting in January. But Dave, we did get you something. It is on back order, so I do have a rendering of what it is, and this is it. It's the GOAT. So we got this statue for you, Dave Miranda. Thank you, Dave, for all you do, and I know that you might be off the board in January, but you're not done, and you'll still be around. So thank you.
Well, this is not a funeral. I didn't die. I'm not even sick. It's not a wake. I've enjoyed doing what I've done for 25 years, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm not heading off with the retirees to Florida. I'm going to be here. You'll probably see me more at events now than less, and that could be scary for some of the people out there, because my wife and I are huge supporters of both athletics and the arts, and we show up a lot of times at all different venues. So I appreciate the kind words. It's been a labor of love for 25 years. I enjoy being on the board. As far as emotions, I think I'm a little bit more emotional leaving the Milford School District officially than I was when I left the job that I was at for almost 20 years. So if that tells you anything. With that, I think I'm going to go ahead and move on and get this meeting on a roll here one last time. And I didn't see any offers to take over the good news report. But hopefully
We'll just
someone
appoint
will.
someone.
We're pulling straws later.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you so much. That brings us to our first public participation. Do we have anyone, Mr. Espy?
We have Mr. Paul Trosher.
Okay.
That's good. That was a plan on it. Good evening. My name is Paul Trosher. I have a senior at Milford High School, and I have lived in the district for over 22 years. I'd like to thank Mr. Espy for all the work he has done to help educate people about the finances for the district, how levies and bonds work, and I wish him luck in his new role. I'd also like to take a minute to talk about the Fine Arts program at Milford Schools. The Fine Arts program allows students to express their creativity in ways they normally wouldn't. This just happened by happenstance, folks. This wasn't planned. The students make long-lasting friendships that they would otherwise not. The students, our children, learn soft skills for the athletics does not always teach. There are many statistics and scientific studies that have been done to support the need for fine arts. Our youngest son and current student, Blake, was invited to participate in the marching band in 8th grade. Usually students have to wait until 9th grade to join the marching band. Fast forward 5 years later, Blake has become his own young man. Blake is seen as a leader and looked up to by other students in the band programs he participates in. He has learned the subtlety required in being a leader that soccer may not have taught him, and made some very meaningful friendships. Without the fine arts experience, well, Blake wouldn't be who he is today. I've also heard it asked, why do we need a fine arts director? I don't know what the daily job duties are, which in my mind means the job is being done right and the individual fine arts staff can focus on the students. What I do know for certain is, without a fine arts director, specifically Josh Kaufman, the Milford Fine Arts program wouldn't be what it is today. Josh genuinely cares about the students and their experience. He wants everyone in the Fine Arts program to excel and enjoy themselves. He's provided guidance to the associated fine arts programs and booster organizations that otherwise wouldn't have been available. Josh has gone out of his way to the point of finding a marching band student's luggage that was left behind on their way to a competition and drove it to Indianapolis. I don't know of any other administrator that would do that. And Josh does all this virtually on his own, while other departments have an army of administrative assistants. I've heard it said that no one wants to impact students with their decision. Let me leave you with this question. How does taking away the fine arts not impact the students? The simple answer is, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else?
Mr. Keith Hayes.
First, I'd like to thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. At our last meeting here, I had noticed something in the numbers regarding the cost of busing over at Mason Schools versus our current cost here. I was kind of interested if you all might be able to speak on what you found out in contacting Mason Schools, because, you know, we're talking over $1 million a year potential savings. Also, having done a little bit of digging, we might actually look at bringing those buses back in, as we might actually be able to get our busing costs below Mason. But again, I don't have all the numbers, but just kind of roughing it out, we might be able to get south of $800 per student per year if we brought it in-house, looking at that roughly. But anyway, I'd love to hear your comment towards that. Thank you.
Mr. Hayes, can we get your contact information, and then Mr. Johnson, myself, and Mr. Espy can get in touch with you about our findings? I will make one comment. Prior board, we did begin to look at bringing busing back in to the district in order to bring a new bus. We'll call it a new bus, $125,000 per bus, and we have upwards of 70 to 80 buses. So we started to look at that. I think it's cost prohibitive, but we'd certainly love to sit down and have a chat with you. Right. Right. Yep.
We have no more.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move ahead to Board of Education Business Superintendent John Spicer.
Either or. We have Ronnie Chamberlain.
Greetings, everyone. I am a parent, a resident, and a 20-year educator. I have been teaching in the School of the Arts at NKU for 10 years and the University of Alabama in their theater program for another 10. I come because I'm really disturbed at the funding cuts and how they're cutting funding. I spent the last 20 years accepting incoming freshmen into college, and I will tell you what doesn't happen. We don't accept kids without any arts experience into our degree programs. One of the things we look at is what they do in high school, and when they do nothing, they don't get majors. One of the things that I appreciate about the arts is the arts funding are college majors. They are degrees and they are jobs. I've spent the last 20 years explaining to people that every time they turn on Netflix, Hulu, a TV, and they look at those credits, those are highly paid, unionized jobs that come from the arts. And we soak up entertainment and media more today than we have 20 years ago. These kids fight for not only positions into the degree program, but for scholarships. And I realize that sports also achieve scholarships, but there is no football degree. There is no college soccer degree. They play sports for scholarships and the opportunity to go into pro sports. We often spend a lot of time educating parents. They often ask us, oh, our other student wants to be an NFL player, and his chances are 1 in a million. What are the chances of our students making it on a Broadway? Well, it's 1 in 1,000. 1 in 1,000. For students who don't want to perform, they want to be musicians or singers or visual artists, it's 1 in 50. We are so depleted in the arts, we are begging students to come to campus. Anybody can have a BA degree, but to get into an MFA degree at any college, and I teach at NKU, we are the least arts school in the entire city of Cincinnati. We are the metro kids. We currently have 25 students from Milford right now in a program with 3,300 majors. Our students are Milford students. It's one of the reasons I moved to this district 4 years ago for my children, because of the arts education. And now I stand here as a parent wondering, did I make the wrong choice in leaving CPS to come to Milford? When I look at these cuts, because these are jobs, these are degrees that gets kids to move forward. And I don't have anything against sports. Sports are great. They teach the same fundamentals that are important in the arts: collaboration, teamwork, communication, problem solving. But the arts are important. They are career building, and they're careers we need in the future right now. Thank you.
That's it.
Al?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move ahead to Board of Education business once again. Superintendent John Spicer.
Under item 1, I'm going to maybe turn this over to Mr. Espy, actually number 2, but the organizational board meeting, we have to approve the date of January 4th at 5 p.m. for this organizational board meeting.
Okay, so I need a motion to set the organizational board meeting for January 4th, 2024 at 5 p.m.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Call roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
I'm going to abstain on this one since I will no longer be around.
Motion carries. As we look at item 2, appointment of a president pro tem for the organizational meeting, this is just purely to serve in that president role until you elect a board president at that meeting.
I need a motion to appoint a board member as president pro tem for the organizational meeting.
So moved.
Second?
So
Do we need
you're actually
nomination?
I need a nomination.
Yes.
That's not what it says on my paper.
correct.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Chestnut.
I'll second that.
All right, do you accept?
Oh, I accept, yes.
Okay.
We have to vote on that?
Yes, yes, so this would be all those in favor of electing Emily Chestnut as president pro tem for the organization meeting.
Okay. All those in favor of electing Emily Chestnut president pro tem for the organizational meeting?
Roll call, so.
Roll call.
No. Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
No.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. Moving on to the treasurer's report, Treasurer John Spicer, or John Espy, excuse me.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. As we look at November, it's a little bit uneventful in some ways in terms of things that were going on in my office. It was more business as usual in terms of the accounting procedures, although we obviously had very heavy discussion at the last meeting that I don't want to overlook. As we look at 41.67% through fiscal year 24, which is 5 months, all funds are below that percentage of expenditure of 41.67. with the exception of the one-time funds that we've talked about for the last couple of months, the local grants, athletics, and miscellaneous federal grants. I would expect a appropriation resolution and amended certificate at the January meeting, just because our miscellaneous local grants are sitting in the 90% expenditures. So we're going to dial that in a little bit more since we've gotten a few more local grants. When we look at expenditures, we're tracking $227,910 to the forecasted amount, which is a 0.3% variance. And that's favorable in terms of our expenditures. And then revenues are $293,741 variance to the forecast amount, which so happens to be also 0.3% variance. And that's again favorable. So both of those together are favorable to our forecast. But you can see the 0.3% variance is still very, very close. When we look at our operating fund, November month to date, $176,988.54. Fiscal year to date, $835,383.67. Our bond and COPS fund for November was $161,789.62 for a fiscal year to date of $1,185,201.17. If we look at financial items happening in November, project cash requests for our federal grants for fiscal year 24 have started. So those have been completed for all the funds that we've spent out of and we need to be reimbursed for. So we should be seeing those come in hopefully at some point this month. Our Medicaid audit for fiscal year 22 is wrapping up. There were just a few items that the auditors were looking at, and they asked us to file an extension through the end of December just so they can do some audit testing, but we've provided all that information to them. Our employee files have been picked up for indexing, so we're working with Strategic Solutions on getting those items indexed. We're also beginning work on a capital plan with all departments and department leaders with Bradley Payne Municipal Advisors, where we're essentially looking at all of our capital expenditures, creating a 10-year plan, and assigning costs to all of those items. So that'll be a good thing for the district going forward. And then finally, we are processing beginning calendar year and closing procedures, where we generate W-2s for our employees and vendor 1099s for those employees that are not incorporated that are 1099s. 1099 vendors. Are there any questions on the board reports?
Dave, do you have one?
Go ahead.
What did we learn, John, about the county valuations with the revenue bumps that we should be seeing? I know it was in the air last time. Did you get anything firmer?
So what we did learn is that House Bill 187 has gone through some changes, and that was really we were concerned as to whether we were going to get the 39% or an average. What's happened now is there's some protection for our aging population based off of their income, and it's based off of their federal adjusted gross income in the household. I don't have specifics on that yet. It's something that I actually attended a webinar on earlier this week, but it doesn't sound like we're going to be seeing or having a large impact on the revenue that was already put into the forecast. And definitely the revenue that I brought last meeting where we were discussing potential reductions. So any revenue changes would be fairly small to the district. Okay. And I can tell you exactly what that'll be as we start to learn more about House Bill 187. But we do know that it's not going to have an average.
Any other questions? I need a motion to approve the treasurer's report as it has been presented.
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
All right, E2 is acceptance of rates for 2023. This was actually sent to a former treasurer's email, so this is, you're actually approving for rates in 2023 in which we've actually already been paid on, but it's something that the county auditor would like us to approve or me to bring to you for consideration of approval.
Is this something we've done annually?
Yes.
And we
So
just,
you're going to see a 2024 acceptance of rates in a couple months.
okay, but is this the first time we voted on
This year, yes.
this year? But we
Yes.
did vote on it in 22.
Yes,
I'm
you
drawing a
voted
blank
on it
here.
in '22. This is the first time you're seeing it in 2023. It's really just a formality,
What, John, why didn't we see it earlier?
just because it did not get sent to me directly.
Got sent the other treasurer?
Yes,
Okay.
and actually the wrong previous treasurer. It was Mr. Giuffre that it was sent to. So,
All right, thank you.
yeah.
Okay, then we need a motion to approve the school resolution for 23 acceptance of rates.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? Call roll.
Mrs. Mason,
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan,
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut,
Yes.
Mr. Miranda.
Yes, thank you.
Item 3 are contracts for approval, so these will be, as you had previously voted on, will be split out. So I'm going to call them G3A is Riverside, which is Iowa Kogat, 23-24 for a 3-year contract, and that's $30,802.50 per year. I'll probably just talk through all of them, if that's okay, and then
Then we'll vote one at a time.
yeah,
Yep,
and
that's
answer
fine.
questions as needed. Brain Pop, which is science curriculum, a 5-year contract for a total of $9,085.12. Lab Aids Science Programs, 5-year contract, total of $59,400. And then Generation Genius Incorporated Science License for 5 years, a total of $4,856. I did want to point out here, the only time that we essentially bring you contracts to approve is if they're multi-year. The board is required to approve any multi-year contract that the district enters into, and any item that is over $25,000 in total. And so that's why you're seeing these contracts. They are already a part of our appropriations, so they've already been budgeted for. This is not in addition to, just so, I know the board, you're aware, but just so the public's aware as well. So G3A, which is the
And,
Riverside contract.
And item A is
Riverside,
Riverside. It is per year for 3 years, correct?
yes,
So that would be like a $90,000 total.
correct.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the contract for Riverside, Iowa COG AT 2324.
Second.
Discussion?
I do have discussion. So I'm going to say a couple things, and then it's going to come back to these contracts. So this weekend, I got a phone call from a teacher in the district. She said she heard me at the last board meeting say that we need to ask teachers for input. And so I appreciate her willingness to encourage to reach out and speak up. And I hope that this can be an invitation to other teachers to contact any one of us with any ideas that you want to share, or suggestions or ideas or whatnot. So this teacher was teaching back in Milford back in 2007 when the levies were failing at that time, and she shared some insight and suggestions and things to think about. She said back in 2007, that time frame, finances were the focus of everyone everywhere. Administration, building principals, secretaries were all very involved, overseeing where costs could be cut. She named a list of suggestions and areas that she thought could be cut. She said from her teacher's perspective, right now in the current climate, from the top down, there doesn't seem to be very much worry about trimming expenses. They're doing things exactly the same as they were 5 years ago with no worrying about what they're spending, and there doesn't seem to be an urgency to reduce. She said she has not seen or felt building budgets being reduced at all. So anyway, she gave me a list of things, which I think we will discuss at the work session in January. But one of them was the subscriptions and how many total subscriptions we have for supplemental learning. She said this seems that the number of digital subscriptions keeps accumulating, and she explained that, you know, we have different ones, different grade levels, different subjects, so we need to keep that under consideration. But one of the things I think she suggested we ask the teachers are, like, what are the top 3 that everyone uses? And maybe these subscriptions could be pared down a little. So for that reason, I ask for the separation of these voting items. 2 of them are supplemental subscriptions that I think we need teacher input. We can revisit if we want to, if these happen to be on a narrowed down list of the most used, but I think that everything needs to be on the table and we need to look at that.
Based on what I heard in committee, I think we talked about how the curriculum budget was actually cut quite significantly in the past 5 years. I have written down from $3 million to $1.7 million. Also, these numbers that we have for these contracts are things like $1.82 per student per year. And I think the total for all the students was $14.68 per student for all the materials per year. And we said that this was in the budgeted forecast, and these materials actually come in under budget, I think by 6 to 7%.
I can't find it on the fly, but we did a digital survey 1 year or 2 years ago, and we did cut some surveys. We did cut some tools. One of them was, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, Discovery Education was one that we had for many years. So we did curate that survey. We sent it out. I do want to dispel that a lot of the things that our teachers are seeing are mostly free. We purchase on a 5-year revisions budget. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have emergency purchases, but everything that we do is generally on a 5-year cycle, unless the state of Ohio makes a change to the standards, which actually are the curriculum, and the things that we buy are the resources that align to that curriculum. We did buy a few things with the 20% of dollars that were required to be spent on education, which were part of the federal ESSER funding that came in a few buckets. But we did do that exact survey. We are not opposed to doing it again. We can run it, but we have done that, and we have trimmed a little fat there. I do want to say on the items that you're voting on, when we talk about secondary science, specifically everything that we're asking you to approve tonight, the total budget was $97,000. They've currently spent if everything is approved, it'll be $73,341. And there are 8 teachers in this department who have unanimously selected these items. So they have met with myself, Todd Wells, Mrs. Getz, their department chair, Mary Burnins, which is part of her role with the supplementals, and it was unanimous. They did want to split between McGraw-Hill and CPUP, which is lab aids, because not anything we purchase comes as a total package. So had the 7th grade purchased or asked the board to purchase McGraw-Hill, that would have been $71,703 just for grade 7. To be fair, though, $42 of that would have been passed on to the parents. We don't have any fee at the junior high that's $42 unless you're borrowing an instrument, which I think is $85. So we would have exceeded our $97,000. The board has also challenged us to be better financially by getting discounts. You will see this is the third renewal of lab aids. There are no books in this renewal, so the books will last not 5 years, but 10. These books will last 5 years, or will last 10. There are significant technological upgrades in every program that we buy. One of the biggest challenges our teachers had was that CPUP/lab aids did not integrate in the Google sphere, so they were cutting, pasting, copying, not able to just quickly put it in, edit it, and have it available for their class. And I did pull the old contract. I'm not sure if it was the final contract. Last time we did spend $70,816.50 for CPUP. And this year we're going to come in at, I think, a hair under 59,400, which is $1188 per student per year. And if you aggregate the books out, they were $15. Some of them were $15.65 last time we purchased them. That means the district purchased them for $1.57 for the 10-year period. Now, due to the fact that CPUP doesn't have anything, they did ask for a supplemental to Brain Pop, which is something which is heavily used inside of the district elementary. In fact, it was, I believe, one of the key things that Please Don't Take Away came out in this survey. But I hope I'm not wrong, but I'll have to find it later. We did get a 49% discount, I believe, on Brain Pop because we haven't had it. 48.96% discount because we've never had it, so I don't expect it to be that cheap in the renewal. That brings it down to $1.82 per year. And then Generation Genius, which is also being used for those teachers in the science, which has been well received. That's coming down to 5 years at $4,856 per year. I think it was a 25% discount, which is $97 cents per student for 5 years. We will continue to engage our teachers. I don't want to say there are a lot of things in our ethos that are free. So I know that Dr. Dunn and Emma Walker have been going around and introducing new tools. Most of those tools, Magic School, others, they're free until they're not, and then we choose not to buy them unless it's part of that 5-year revision. So this year, science across the district, even though there's a little bit of misalignment, has $550,000 inside of the 5-year forecast, and then after this year, the next 4 years, that money for curriculum revisions on the cycle goes up to $600,000 per year. That's already in the 5-year forecast. It doesn't mean we have to spend it all, but to be fair, that's about $87 per student that we spend on core curricular resources that generally last 5 years. So we will continue to engage our teachers. We do that in May of every year. I encourage them to contact Linza, Dr. Dunn, or myself if it's something that they have questions on. Mr. Spicer goes around and has voluntary meetings everywhere, and 9 times out of 10 we're asked to keep things that we have to find a way to pay for once those free subscriptions run out. But we're not, I can say, I think I shared in committee that this budget, and I'm proud of it, has come in anywhere between 5 and 8% under. And I believe, just like Josh would believe for his area, and Rob would believe for his, and Jeff would believe for his, what C&I does is the work of the district. So if there's a place that we should be expanding or expending the entire budget, it's here, teaching and learning, but we're a small chunk of the Milford family of spending, and I'll stop there.
But Paul, before you sit down, a quick question. Isn't the Iowa test a state requirement?
Yes, so that's what's separate. It didn't come up. I went on my science diatribe, I'm sorry. So every year in 2nd and 4th grade, you are required to give the Iowa COGAT. Well, I'm sorry, you're required to give a gifted screener. Iowa and COGAT are one of the 22 that are approved. And I think we often, maybe it's you, Mr. Combs, I think talks about when we make an investment, there's also a cost to train everybody. We've been using Iowa and COGAT for many years. Dr. Dunn did move us from paper to digital, so there was some training and some small videos, but this is a requirement. We do have, as you remember from some board meetings last year or the year before, we do receive restricted funds for gifted. We do expend those first before we pay for Iowa COGAT out of general fund. So because if you look at the school funding report, you will see the number of gifted students we have and the number of dollars that we are allocated for. We pay mostly for our GISs, our gifted interventionists, their materials, and then testing, whatever. If we go over that, then we use general fund, and this is appropriated for inside of the C&I budget.
My exiting esteemed colleague to my left here just mentioned 80 years ago he took the Iowa test, so it's been around for a while.
Before Iowa was a state, yes.
So thank you for that. I want to say going from 3 million to 1.7 in C&I is astonishing, actually, to me. So the group can be commended in a lot of ways. We've looked in other parts of this district to cost significantly rising over time, and for that to reduce in, I don't even think is questionably the most important mission that we have is to educate our students is a tip of the cap. So I agree with you violently about that comment, and I think I may have even mentioned it during committee as well.
And we will send out a survey again, just as we did. I can't find the name of it.
It was 2 years ago. It wasn't a survey. Yeah, Rob and company actually sat down with each grade level and had a discussion about what they use and what they don't use. And so we have that. It was 2 years ago. It doesn't mean we can't do it again and shouldn't do it again.
And John, it sounds like some of those things were trimmed as a result, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we had Discovery Education. It was called something else, something streaming. United beginning of time. So it felt like, but I do know that if Ms. Davy was to send out a survey, she would probably get resounding feedback to abandon Moby Max. But look, Ms. Powers is saying no. But it's one of the things that she hears about a lot. So when we do go out and do our revisions, Ms. Davy and myself, we do ask, what do you want to keep? What do you want to get rid of? And I was sweating quite a bit when the 7th grade wanted McGraw-Hill because we don't really try to make choices for them. They have to live with these, and we do make a district commitment for everything we buy for 5 years, unless they do something so wildly inappropriate that we would break the contract and not feel comfortable. But most of them will give you a discount, and this will be the third renewal of lab aids that I can think of, which means it will have been at the junior high for 15 years at its conclusion. And if you look at our testing data, which isn't the end-all be-all, it's the 8th grade science, because of the outstanding staff there and I believe the resources they lean into, they do really well.
And again, if we had money, all of this is great. I'm not against any of it. And I think our work session will help hash out all the ideas, we've never done that. We asked for it last year, and I think it will be great to throw all of these things out and talk openly about them and hash out, maybe there's cuts somewhere else that can go back to C&I. Right now, there's no good answer because we're spending money we don't have. So we have to make cuts somewhere. That's the bottom line. Nothing, not a home, not a business, not a corporation, not a school, not whatever entity you want to call it sustains spending more money than they have. So that's where we are, unfortunately.
Any other
Tech is great. I did find the survey. Yearly tech tool inventory. Tools used below would impactful if we did not renew the subscriptions. There were 321 responses. Jenny, we have about 400 100 teachers-ish, certified teachers. Discovery Education streaming came in at 22%. We then went in and looked at the usage report and made the difficult decision to get rid of it. And then we decided to keep Edpuzzle. And 170 people that responded on those two tools said they had never used them at all. So this was, I believe the last time I looked at this was 2023. Happy to send you the results when I get back to my office to make sure this is right. But there were 321 responses.
Thanks, Paul.
Any other comments? Okay, we're going to be voting for these one at a time. I already have a motion and a second for Riverside, Iowa, Cogat. Mr. Crispy, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. I need a motion for Brain Pop Science Curriculum 5-year contract.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
No.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. I need a motion to approve Lab Aids Science Program 5-year contract.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Quick question about this one. And Rob or Paul may be easier to answer this. When does our current agreement expire for Lab Aids?
It will expire on the 30th of June.
30th
of
June.
2024. And this one kicks off like fiscal year, I think, 7/1.
So for this one, is there a risk to put it on next month's board meeting?
If I had clear direction about what you're looking for. Are you wanting me to go back to the vendor and hammer them for more discounts?
No.
Okay,
no,
so
no.
It doesn't, other than they do have to redo their pacing, which it can be put a month out. I think Paul's honest, most transparent, probably get in trouble answer is there's a lot of uncertainty, and the less uncertainty that we can give the people who stand in front of our kids every day, the better off we would be. I would also say that any time that any member of this board has a reservation about something that we talk about in committee, I'm always reflective and wondering what I could have done from last Thursday to this Thursday to help answer any questions or close any gaps. It's a renewal. I worry about what indications I need to give the people that I support in the building. That's my honest answer.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on Lab Aids. Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. And finally, item D, Generations Genius Incorporated. That's a science license for another 5 years. Need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
No.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Item 4 is donations. There's some various donations I want to read off here. $600 from the Kiwanis Club of Milford to use for students in need. $24,764 donation from McCormick Elementary PTO for the purchase of sunshades from Recreations Outlet. $1,426 donation from River Hills Christian Church for negative lunch account balances at McCormick. And then $100 an anonymous donation for Meadowview for reducing negative lunch balances. I want to thank all of those donors for everything they do for the district, and obviously the McCormick PTO going above and beyond for the sunshades. And I do want to say that there's been an ongoing communication about this, and it's nice to kind of have this come to fruition.
Okay, I need a motion to approve these 4 donations.
So moved. Second.
Discussion?
I want to say thanks to all the PTOs for the work they do. I've been attending their meetings, and there's a lot of dedication from a lot of people for the students and the staff. And it comes in big donations like this and small things like thank you notes, but we really appreciate the work.
Amen there.
Very sincere thank you to all 4. The PTO is huge. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Item 5 is the disposal of district inventory items. So this is a marimba, a Musser marimba vibraphone from the band department, as well as a vacuum wet and dry commercial Colt. Both of these items, if there is value, would be go through an online auction to be able to bring money if they're deemed that they, or if nothing is brought towards them, they would be disposed of. So that's the process that we go through.
Okay, I need a motion to dispose of the 2 district inventory items as listed here.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
I do
Moving
have
on.
I do have one item that
Yes, sir.
I did want to bring up as an information item. I just wanted to let everyone know that I've made the difficult decision to resign my position. You'll see that on the agenda in January. You know, and part of the reason why it wasn't on the agenda this evening is because I wanted to speak with the board about a transition plan to make sure that the district is in the best possible hands and that all of the items are taken care of that the district has. I do want to say that I love Milford. I grew up here, taught here. You know, I do plan to make myself available to the board during my, you know, day-to-day work, obviously, as we transition and after, if asked. It's been an honor to serve Milford, and once an eagle, always an eagle. So thank you all.
Thank you, John. I think I speak for everybody on the board, and I don't do this very often, by saying how appreciative we are of the effort that you put in and everything that's been done here in the last, since the first of the year. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to speak up and say that as I have plans underway and have already been working with the board on what the process looks like to hire a new treasurer. But I think it's not an understatement to say you'll be irreplaceable. But our job as a board is to ensure that we set the next person up for success. And I feel a little bit like we failed you because you were really good, and I don't know that we'll be able to find somebody who can be as creative in funding sources, be as open to questions. It really is, for anyone who hasn't ever worked with Mr. Espy, it's a huge, huge loss. And my responsibility that I'm taking on as a member of the board is to ensure that the person who comes behind you, we set them up for success so that they don't feel the same life misbalance that I think was a big part of it. And as board members, it's our job to be respectful of the work and the time and the job that is done from one of the most important roles we have here. So you will be sorely missed, and we really, really appreciate the work you've done and the work that you're committed to doing and seeing this transition through.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. It's a big loss. Big loss for the district and the kids. I'm wishing you well.
Thank you.
I also feel like I want to put my 2 cents in. I think we've all seen John in action, and all of the things that were said are very much true. But I think one of the things that I'm going to miss the most, one of John's strongest attributes, is that he's a very patient and kind teacher. he's always willing to hop on a phone call and explain things like pros and cons of like earned income taxes, or he sends us emails all the time explaining the different implications of House bills. He really knows his legislation. And then it's not just the board that he's teaching, it's the community. I had the pleasure to see him at a couple of the Milford 101 sessions. And when people had questions, he was always able to explain the answer. And if somebody didn't understand it, he would explain it in a different way until they understood it. He always took every question from the community, and he was always willing to talk to anybody about the school finances. I mean, there were a couple times people came up and spoke at our public participation, and if they had a question, he would get their contact information and get right back to them. So I'm really, really going to miss that, and I hope that as a board, we can all work together to put some new guidelines together to help that work-life balance so that we're not in the same place 9 months again.
Anyone else? Once again, John, thank you for all that you've taught us over the time that you've been here.
Thank you.
Moving on, let's go to superintendent's business. Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda. Members of the board, Mr. Jeff Johnson is at the podium with some middle school auditorium field house updates.
I was going to say, we title it Middle School Update, but we talk about a lot of the projects we've got going on. Wednesday morning, 482 seats showed up in the auditorium, which are all these boxes. You can see painting is pretty much complete other than touch-up. Seats are being installed. They'll be complete by the end of the week. We've got some panels, AV systems that are following in. The pit filler is due to be installed on January 4th, which is a couple days late, but we've been working with Mr. Kaufman and the drama department, and we're good to go. So the project is very quickly coming to an end. Next one, Steve. So there's the new seats going in. That was taken at approximately 6:30 this morning. As I said, they are scheduled to be essentially complete with that installation by the end of the day tomorrow. Carpet will come in after the fact. Stage floors going down. So a lot of activity going on the last couple of weeks. But we're looking forward to opening that up when staff and students come back in January. If you're not familiar, there used to be a set of bleachers in between where that picture was taken and the other bleachers. So the south bleachers have been demoed, getting ready to install the new ones. This is in the new public restrooms we've got in the field house. So those are carriers for all the restrooms, the toilets that are going in. What you're looking at here is basically from what is currently the teacher lot will eventually become the bus lot looking into the academic wing of the middle school. We had our first slab pour on the middle school last week. So the academic wing is split up into two different areas, area A and B. The middle section where offices and cafeteria and kitchen are is split up into C and D, and then the gym area is area E. So this was area A. So basically half the first floor slab was poured last week. The second half of that floor will be poured on Tuesday. Here you can see underground plumbing roughed in going in. That's pretty sure that's all buried under concrete right now. If not, it'll be buried under concrete on Tuesday. Couple of aerial views. I want to get in your way, Ms. Nolan. So this is our academic wing on the east side of the building. You were just looking at that wall that I showed you a couple pictures ago. That's the wall here. So this is area A that was poured last week. This area right here is area B that'll be poured on Tuesday. So this is our cafeteria is in the middle, kitchens in this area along with mechanical rooms, offices, the academy's up here, And then this down here would be the 2 gymnasiums, our field house, and then concession stand restroom area over here. You can see this picture was taken when the bleachers were still up. This is a view looking north. Again, our academic wing. So that picture that we were showing you was taken about here. And then this is going to be the main entrance to the building right here. This will be a parking lot. And we've got our main gym and our aux gym, and then our field house behind it. There will be a road. I don't know if you can really see it. There's a road that comes in and will go all the way behind the building and cut down between the field house and the middle school.
Jeff, will the road in the front, how it's curving down, is that how it's going to be?
Not exactly.
It'll kind of, or the bus lot will be a little straighter?
Yes, it'll be a little bit straighter. We had to do it that way because there's some underground electric that was through there that until we get the new feed to come in, we couldn't remove the old feed.
Okay.
So
But that's temporary, that weird.
Yes, it won't be quite, it'll be similar, but not exactly the same. And then again, this is kind of from Wolf Pen, giving a look, kind of giving you a bit of an idea of the overall scope of everything we've got going on. The main entrance to the stadium is going to be right here. So the restrooms, public restrooms, are in the bottom corner. Concession stand up front. There's a locker room here. This is the wrestling area. The high bay area, obviously, is our basketball courts. And then we've got locker rooms, coach's office, and a training room there as well. And then, obviously, we've got our middle school going down that way. So things are going well. We finally have pretty much all our permits in hand. You guys obviously have on the agenda tonight the final GMP on the building to approve. That was necessary to split out because we had to wait until we got the budget adjustment from OFCC that I think we talked about last month. So that finally came through, and now we're able to do GMP 1.3. Any questions?
I asked the same one every board meeting.
You or I are going to ask it. Go ahead.
Are we still on schedule?
We are on schedule. It's very tight. We actually had a meeting on Monday working through that schedule. Congress working with their subcontractors to revise that schedule a little bit. Essentially, the schedule I've got isn't really reality, and so they're updating some things. So over the holidays, that'll be updated, and we'll get back together with them probably the first week of January. But to make a long story short, yes, I continue to receive reassurances that we're going to be in there by August.
And I don't know which of you want to answer this. What is our projected over budget number again?
We're still sitting at around the same number. It's
Yeah.
between 9.5 and 10 million.
Yeah, that number has continued to stay the same.
And that's even after the additional funds from OFCC when we got
Correct.
it, correct?
Yep.
It just comes down to who's paying, like, what portion of that. Yeah.
No surprises. We're still kind of where we've been for a while.
Right.
Did I hear that question correct? That it's 10 million over, some being paid by us and some being paid by OFCC? Did I hear that? Is that what I heard?
Well, it all depends on what the project ends up costing at the end. And if it's, I don't know if you want to go into this any further, but like, we've got the state portion, the local portion, and then the LFI that we call the locally funded initiative. And I think it depends on what bucket, well, it depends on if LFI is what causes us to go over. Really is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I don't want to go into that anymore because that's a swamp.
Yeah. We have monthly meetings, and you guys have weekly
We
meetings.
have at least weekly. I'm meeting with them on a daily basis, but we have weekly projects meetings, and then we have a monthly core meeting.
And we're doing everything we can, I know in the meetings that I sit in, to control the budget.
That's correct. I get an updated, we call it a PCO log, a potential change order. We get an updated PCO log on a weekly basis. So we're all good. Anything, we have had some changes. They're all within the contingencies that we've got built into the project.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Under Superintendent Business, item number 2, board retreat. We have scheduled the board retreat on Saturday, January the 20th from 9 to noon. It'll be in this building. And we do have a facilitator from the Hamilton County ESC. And this is to sort of onboard Myra Powers to the board, and we'll have some good time together. Under item 3, school resource officer update. I just wanted to update the board. Today, our elementary principals, Jeff Johnson and a host of others, met with potential incoming school resource officers from Miami Township, potentially having one of them starting maybe in February at Mulberry. And also had a conversation with Chief Mills of the Milford Police Department. Their process is still going through City Council, so we hope to have an answer from them by next week, and are optimistic and hopeful that we'll have a school resource officer at Pattison beginning in August. And the other school resource officers from Miami Township will start in August as well, as they have to backfill those positions. And so we're excited about the opportunity to have school resource officers in all of our elementary schools, junior high, and high school.
And John, isn't it true that we are splitting the cost of this?
Correct. We are splitting the cost with
So
them.
they're paying half, we're paying half.
Yes, sir.
And if they decide to work on the weekends, for example, Miami Township, are we still covering those costs?
If they work on the weekend, that would probably be a detail, and so that would be separate from what we do.
Okay. I thought about that yesterday, and I wasn't sure, so thank you.
I have no other items under business.
Okay. Let's move forward to Human Resources Business. Once again, Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. Under Human Resources, we do have items 1, 3, and 4, asking for your approval of those 3 items. Also noting that under item 1A, we do have retirements from Michelle Dolezal, 28 years of service, and Terry Flood at McCormick with 33 years of service to the district, retiring as well.
That is in a lot of years. Okay, I need a motion to approve items 1, 3, and 4 in the Human Resources section.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a quick congratulations to the retirees. It's years earned for some relaxation, so thank you.
Hearing no other comments, call the roll.
Mrs. Mason,
Yes.
Mr. Combs,
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan,
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut,
Yes.
Mr. Miranda.
Yes, thank you.
Under Human Resources, exempt personnel approval, asking for your approval under item number 2.
I need a motion to approve item number 2, exempt personnel approval here.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Okay, call the roll.
Mrs. Mason,
Yes.
Mr. Combs,
No.
Mrs. Nolan,
No.
Mrs. Chestnut,
Yes.
Mr. Miranda.
Yes, thank you. Moving on to curriculum instruction business, Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. Under C&I this evening, we do have 4 items for your approval. We have approval of curriculum pay, foreign exchange students, course approvals for the high school course guide, and the Milford Junior High course science adoption.
Okay, I need to motion to approve items 1 through 3 on the curriculum and instruction business.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I do have a question. This is probably a Jenny Berkeley question. We often approve additional curriculum training or different trainings for groups of people up to a certain number of hours. Do we ever get, or what is the mechanism used? Is there like a time log that they submit? Do they submit some kind of proof that they do it, or do we just end up paying the whole 10 hours? Or whatever the up to hours are on the different categories?
Yeah, curriculum hours are submitted to Paul.
Okay.
On these, if he wants to share the process, so.
Paul, can you go to the microphone? Thank
I
you.
just didn't know if we end up paying the whole 10 hours, or if they have to submit time logs for training or whatever.
Typically, we use a Google Sheet. So when we approve outside of school hours to do a curriculum rewrite, we'll say that you have up to 20 hours, I'll give a great example. Recently, we did our Wonders teacher leaders. I probably said it wrong, Linza. And she went out and she asked them for how many hours they worked. We submitted those. Some of them worked the full 10. Some of them worked 4 1/4. We also talk about home instruction in C&I. We talk about how typically, because we need that student right away to be served per their individual education plan, we approve more hours than we need so that we can have them. So they must turn in a Google Sheet to us, and then I email the treasurer, put in the number of hours that they've accumulated, then payroll pulls from that spreadsheet and pays on the first or second pay of the month. So there's a curriculum sheet that's could be pulled down as evidence of what we pay and how we pay. And there are many people that we approve each year that don't put in for any time or don't do it. So it's usually through a Google Sheet.
And the rate that we're paying for that is less than their hourly school rate,
It's $25 an hour. It's negotiated in the
$25.
contract.
Yeah, okay,
So.
that's a deal.
Any other comments? Mr. Espy, call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. That brings us to item I, correct?
Yes, sir.
Business operations, Superintendent John Spike.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. We are asking for your approval of the GMP Amendment 1.3 as presented.
Okay, I need a motion to approve GMP Amendment number 1.3 for the middle school building finish package.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Jeff, just to clarify, this GMP, this is for the very last and finishing package, correct? And we needed to wait on this for OFCC funding, correct? I don't know if I'm,
For the building of the middle school, you are correct. There will be another GMP that will come probably sometime in the spring of 2025 that will be for the abatement and demolition of the junior high. That's a separate budget bucket with OFCC, and that's not included in anything we've done. But the actual building of the middle school, yes, you are correct.
okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I'll wait till he sits down and ask him another one. I'm not
A
going to
motion
do
and a
that.
second, correct?
Yes.
Let's call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. Board of Education concluding items. Public participation number 2. Do we have any speakers?
Miss Amanda Fox?
So as I sit here tonight, it's Amanda Fox. So as I sit here tonight and I listened, and then also the last couple of board meetings, one thing that has been brought up multiple times is cutting admins. I know we heard somebody speak tonight about Josh Kaufman's on the chopping block, according to the stuff we saw last week. John Espy has given us great data from local schools around us and the admins that they have versus their cost. I took it a step further and I called a couple other schools. And one of the schools I called is local to Cincinnati. They have 1,350 students. They have one principal, 2 assistant principals, and a dean of faculty, and then a dean of students. If you divide those 5 positions out with those 1,350, there's 270 pupils per admin. I called another school. They have 300 students in their high school. They have a principal, an assistant, 1 dean that deals with discipline. And then they have 2, they call them ESC coordinators. Those 2 admins only deal with students on IEPs. There's 300 students in the school. They have 2 admins that deal with IEPs. Milford High School, 2,000 students, 5 admins, 400 students per admin. Milford Junior High, 1,000 students, 3 admins, 335 students. Fine Arts admin deals with about 400 performing arts students, 600 visual art students. Some of those kids are overlapped, but not all. So I would just like to ask the 2 board members why St. X and why Marco Island Academy is okay to have those numbers for admins, but Milford City Schools isn't okay with having the admins that we have.
Our last public participation is Mr. Morris Linzicki.
A joke. She's a total joke.
Morris Linzicki, this thing.
You're good. It's on.
Okay, so to finish on a good note, as a community member that is involved and concerned, I challenge this entire board to find better ways to work together. Stop the pettiness, stop the decisive comments, take time to work together, come up with recommendations, and bring forward action plans. I like the fact that we have differing views. It's healthy, it's good. You don't have to agree on all, but you do need to come together with agreements. And those agreements are for the betterment of our community, our students, our teachers, our staff, and the health of Milford school districts. We need this board to bring an operating levy to residents with a 5-0 vote. So, with the possibility of a 2024 levy, I ask you to focus on the next few months by having immediate board engagement. Within the next 2 to 3 months, get community involvement. And at the same time, we heard before, get teachers and staff to buy in. All those 3 things have to work. Board engagement, community involvement, teacher staff buy-in, or we don't have a levy to go to. I recognize that even with you have to recognize that even with cuts, the district will still need a levy to balance ongoing expenses and the Ohio State funding. Not the Ohio State University, but Ohio State funding. Last topic. On public comments, we should make sure that people that attend these meetings, that get up here on the podium, talk about topics. The board policy says you do not speak to individuals, whether they're board members, whether they're staff members. So I ask that this board and the new board focus on making sure that people are talking about topics and not any individuals. So rather than talking about individuals, talk to the board as one, rather than individuals. The reason for that is that if we talk to them as one, maybe they'll work better together. So with that, happy holidays, and thanks for your time.
That's the final public participation.
Okay. Moving on, in Board of Education business, we got open discussion here. Any comments from the board?
I do, but my mic is not working. Can I borrow? I just wanted to thank Dave for his service to the board. I feel like in the past 2 years, you've acted as a mentor to me, and you've helped me understand the ins and outs of being a board member. Thank you so much for being involved and teaching me that being a board member is much more than going to a monthly committee meeting and the monthly board meetings. It's being out in the community, going to games and art shows, plays, and convocation, handing out diplomas, meeting new teachers, and learning how to be a good board member and bring new ideas to the district at the Capitol Conference. I know everybody moans and groans about your good news report that comes out at the end of the meeting, but I'm actually very glad that you focus on the positive things that are happening in our schools and our community. I know you won't be a stranger to the district, but I do wish you the best in your board retirement.
Thank you.
Oh, I have one. Okay, I have two things. The first one is, I know we do have a lot of meetings coming up. We've scheduled a couple work sessions. We have some treasurer interview things. But we also need to discuss picking a day to interview council. I know Emily and I started that. We've provided bios to the other board members. And now we need to proceed with interviewing those people. So I'm not sure when we want to fit in doing that. Thoughts?
The good news is, contrary to what I heard in my very first organizational meeting, if we decide on council, which is part of the agenda every year in the org meetings, there is absolutely zero risk to the district by changing that council out as early as a day after that decision. So there's no risk at all. So when we show up at an organizational meeting, if this board approves the current incumbent, it will not halt, deter any activity in choosing a possible replacement for that council. I just want to make that super clear, that the district is not in any way, shape, or form at risk because we're taking this action. We just think it's proper to do our due diligence, and I think this board's been unanimous about that. So
on that note, I think our January's kind of booked. So if we want to look into February or even into March, depending on, or we want to reevaluate at the end of January based on.
I think that reevaluating might be a good idea. We have a lot on our plate right now with the levy, and we're getting a new board member in, and we'll have some nice time together to all get on the same page at our retreat. I think that also with looking for a new treasurer, we have a lot going on. I would suggest that we look at it again in February.
That's fine. Okay, so that's where we stand on that. And then my second part was, Dave, I wanted to just thank you for your leadership, your good news reports that everyone secretly
Loathes.
no, loathes and loves. And good luck and happy golfing.
Thank you. Hit them straight.
just some additional color towards what's in front of us over the next 3 months. As we approached the levy last year, I wanted to have a work session to discuss openly about the things that we may or may not be able to do to trim cost, improve our our deliverable in education, et cetera, and wasn't afforded that opportunity. It just simply did not happen. We did not schedule a work session or a special meeting to do so. So we get a chance to do that now, and I'm excited, and I think the entire board's excited about meeting in January. We're going to follow that meeting up with some trimmed ideas, because that meeting in January is going to be, and it will be open to the public. That meeting in January is going to be us brainstorming particular ideas. I may have an idea that is clearly untenable. I want to hear that from a former teacher of 41 years, which Ms. Meyer-Powers will represent in one of these chairs. I want to hear all of the ideas that my other colleagues have. I want to hear the administration and even some of the teacher community when we reach out for their involvement. I want to clearly understand if we are proposing a particular cut, what's the impact of that? We are not right-sized today based on our revenue model, so that means we're going to have to do something. And what do we do? Besides, we can't throw our hands up in the air and say we're not going to do anything. We have to do something, and there's some difficult decisions that'll need to be made. But I just wanted to share with the group that in January, we get a chance to share ideas, and I'm excited about that. Those ideas will be vetted, some research will be done, our administration will come back in another meeting in February and share their findings, and we'll start to trim down and really understand the implications of some of these ideas. Some of them could be absolutely crazy. I want to understand if they are or not, and eventually, we're on a timeline that we are going to have to eventually narrow down and land somewhere as a board to present a package that will land on a ballot in November, and you and everyone else in this community will be voting on. But I'm excited about the opportunity to vet all of the ideas that everyone has. The ideas that you saw at the last board meeting, those were ideas that the administration put together. Those weren't board ideas. Those were ideas that they had thought through. Those weren't definitive decisions. I think the administration said, hey, here's some ideas that we have, and we looked at those. So all of those things are on the table. We just need to talk openly about all of them, and I'm looking forward to that. So I just wanted to share with the community that we've got a really important next 90 days ahead of us to really figure out how to right-size our district to put something that all of us can support and get behind in November. Lastly, thank you, Dave. I told you I was a bit envious of all the golf you're going to be playing. I don't have the time for that.
I wanted to thank Dave. We started this journey together for something years ago as we campaigned, and I don't think anybody expected us to build our resume of experience on our first term so quickly with COVID and a superintendent and a treasurer search, and we've been through a lot, and I really appreciate the dedication. If anyone talks to Dave, you don't walk away wondering if he likes Milford or not, because he loves it here, and he's dedicated, and we really appreciate all the time and service you've given to the district.
Well, thanks to everybody for their kind words. If everyone has spoken now, so I'm guessing it's my time, and you spoke. We had a very interesting term together in a lot of ways. First of all, we came into the organizational meeting, and the first meeting was really fun, voting, we knew what we were voting on. We were voting yes or no on a lot of things. And then the next month, the superintendent resigned. That was February of 2020. And then the next month, COVID hit. So that was the first 3 months in here. So it was a baptism by absolute fire. We've weathered a lot of things in here. A lot of things have happened in 4 years. Quite honestly, I made a list of about a half a dozen bullet points that I'll go through really, really quick. We successfully navigated under Mr. Spicer, getting through the COVID problems that we had for a better part of a year and a half, I guess. Some of the other things that we've done is we've hired, in those 4 years, we hired both of those gentlemen that are sitting down there at the end of the table. We passed a bond for a middle school that was in the beginning thought to be impossible to pass, and we passed it, and we passed it with enough of a margin that we felt really, really good about that. Now, with regards to some of the other things, one of the first things that we were doing right after we started was we renovated our gymnasium, which was the original gym from the 80s or 90s. I forget when exactly they built that in there. That was totally renovated on our watch, as well as what you saw tonight, the renovation of the theater, construction of the athletic wing over there, what we refer to lovingly as the nest, and also through some donations and some grant writing, getting the turfing of Cherry Lucas Field done. I dare say that in the 4 years that we've been on the board, there have been more brick and mortar projects here on this campus than at any time in the history of Milford School District. So a lot has gone on in that period of time, and I'm grateful that I got to have a little bit of a hand in that, along with the other board members and along with the administration as well. It's hard to step away from these folks, and it's hard to step away from this district, and I'm just going to step back. I'm not stepping away. Something will present itself, and I'll be back doing something somewhere here in the next year. If you hear of anything, let me know. I'm always looking for ideas of something to put my time into, because you can only play so much golf. But with that, I'm going to go into what I hope is not the last good news report, but what may be the last good news report. So, good news for 12/14/2023. Craft Show took place on the 2nd of December. That's be 2 weeks on Saturday. It's sponsored by the Athletic Boosters. They take care of the show, and we had over 250 crafters, making it the largest craft show in the tri-state area. In the tri-state area, and also I heard from the people over at the Booster Board in the last couple of days that it was the most successful monetarily of anyone that they've ever had there. So that is wonderful, and I know from experience that all of that money will go right back into some project here that's of brick and mortar variety. Don't know what that's going to be yet. That's up for them to decide, but another great show. It's one of their 2 best fundraisers of the year. Moving on, Betsy Woods, she's the Milford High School English Department Chair, presented twice at the National Council of Teachers of English. Her presentations were, these are long titles, these are run-on sentences, Betsy, collaborating to support student writers, connecting writing project sites with university and high school writing centers. And the second one was book clubs and empathy project, getting out of their way as students build community connections and love of literature. So congratulations to Betsy. That's a real feather in the district's cap when people from our district go and present on a national base, on a national level. Also, Misty Getz, who was here earlier this evening, she's a junior high principal, was one of 3 panelists invited to present from the Cincinnati area at the Hamilton County Educational Service Center, where they discussed women in leadership, and she is a wonderful leader. Last Friday, the Milford High School gymnasium floor was dedicated in honor of Ted Dixon, who is a former teacher and coach. Ted coached the girls' basketball team for 16 years, leading them to the girls' basketball State of Ohio Final Four in 1992, the highest we've had a team like that advance. As far as dates to remember, the Milford Athletic Hall of Fame will have their annual induction on Friday, January the 11th, 2024, prior to the varsity game, the boys' varsity game against Walnut Hills. Typically, that starts in the 6:45 to 7 o'clock range. You have to wait until the JV finishes their game and hope that they don't go overtime. And finally, Milford Flight Night is scheduled for Thursday, March 14th, 2024. Again, this event is organized by the Athletic Boosters. It's the second of their two highest fundraisers, and all the proceeds go back to Milford Athletics, as I said before. This year's guest speakers are Baseball Hall of Famer Tony Perez and Reds great Davey Concepcion, and tickets will be on sale after the first of the year. Great event. Plan to attend it. So that brings me to the end. Yes. You know, that didn't show up on the agenda, and I lost sight of it. Yeah,
I want to remind you of that.
we had our football coach, Tom Grippa, won an award as Coach of the Year, I believe, was honored down at the Bengals game 3 or 4 weeks ago, I guess. Along with that honor came a $10,000 check, which will go, how will that be distributed? Do we know?
I believe it goes to the boosters.
Goes
Yeah, it
into
goes
the
directly to
boosters?
the boosters, yeah.
So 100% of that will come back into more building projects and defray the costs that the district might have to pay.
Yes.
So that's another one. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that. So that brings the curtain down here. Got a couple other things here. You've got an organizational meeting on January 4th. We talked about that. That will be here on site. We've got a board retreat on the 20th. That will also be here on site, correct? And those are the two items that we have. We can't talk about the next board meeting because that's decided at the organizational meeting, so watch your emails for that notification. Which brings me to ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Assuming there is no discussion. So one last time, Mr. Espy, for old time's sake, call the roll.
Mrs. Mason,
Yes.
Mr. Combs.
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan,
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut,
Yes.
and Mr. Miranda.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Have a happy holiday.